Welcome to Figure Feedback. My name is Jeremy, and today I'm going to be doing a print comparison between these two printers. We've got the new kid on the block, which is the Flashforge Creator 5, right here on the left, and the tried and true Snapmaker U1 here on the right. Both of these printers have 4 different tool heads, which means that you can print with 4 different materials, and you don't have to worry about purging any filament as it switches between those materials. Now, the Flashforge here comes in at $699, and the Snapmaker U1 is $899. So because the Flashforge printer is still new, there's still promotions going on, and I've got one of them. So if you find yourself interested in this, you can use the link in the description. It also has a promo code there that's going to save you $30 on the Creator 5. And if I have anything for the Snapmaker U1, I'll put that down in the description as well. They're both affiliate links, so now you know what you're getting yourself into. All right, so let's start things off with something that's more practical, I think. These two things here are SD card and micro SD card holders, something that you can travel with. The one that's a lighter color yellow came from the Flashforge Creator 5, and then you got this darker yellow here that came on the Snapmaker U1. No supports for either of these, and as we just sort of take a look at them, I find it difficult to really see which one looks better or worse than the other. They both look very smooth on the top and on the bottom. And as far as how it functions as holding SD cards, you see it has all these little slots in here. It all just slots in very easily. No problems whatsoever with that. The little parts right here is where you can put a little micro SD card, and that works out just fine as well. And then the top just spins on like this once you line up the threads, and then you can just twist it shut just like that. And as I look at these closely, they are difficult to tell them apart. The first layers went down very nice and smooth. I don't see any imperfections there on the bottom. I don't see any imperfections on the top. And as I look at the side walls, everything just looks even, with the only real difference that I can see, at least, just being the different shade of yellow from the Snapmaker U1. And they both function the same way. Everything is all nice and smooth. And when you put these back together, you kind of have to sandwich them together a little bit first and then twist them shut. And then it just sits very nice and flush. You can barely even see the line that connects the two. So yeah, both of these came out, I think, to be pretty much virtually identical to each other. So no real champion as far as these go. Now, let's take a look at some of these dragons. Now, you know how when it comes to the very first print, with most printers, it's going to be a Benchy. But with the Snapmaker U1, this dragon here sort of became the unofficial mascot for your first print because it is made up of 4 different colors. So for the Snapmaker U1, it has the lighter shade of red dragon, and then for the Creator 5, it has this darker red, but all the other colors are the same. And as we take a look at both of these, once again, they both look very, very close to each other. I'm sure if you nitpick in the finest corners of this model, you can probably say one or the other takes the cake. But as I'm looking underneath the chin area, as I'm looking at the little fingernails, man, everything on both of these just looks really quite clean. You really would be hard pressed to tell these apart, and I've been looking at these guys for a while, so maybe I've kind of gone blind to their differences, so to speak, but that's why I'm leaving this up here so that you can take a look at them yourselves and you can tell me or share your opinion on which one looks better, or if you think that they look pretty much the same. But now, since we've kind of already neglected the Benchy, I think that we should give it its due. But I didn't do just any ordinary Benchy. I did a Canadian Benchy. So this is just a regular Benchy that has the decorations of the Canadian flag on there. So you got that huge maple leaf right there in the middle. And as we take a look at these two Benchies, once again, they look almost identical to each other, although the Snapmaker U1, which is the one that has the lighter red color once again, it looks like there was a little bit of perhaps under extrusion right near the top of the bow here, just right there. There's like this little line that things didn't quite go according to plan, where everything is just smooth in that area on the Creator 5. But I think that's like the biggest thing that just sort of stands out. Everything else, they look very similar to each other, including some imperfections on some areas due to the colors where like they both share like this little white notch in the back. You can see that the filament looks a little bit stringy at that point, and they both just sort of suffer from that. But the maple leaf on the front, on the inside of the Benchy, that also looks nice and clean. There's another maple leaf like near the back where the porthole is. That came out nice and clean. And even on the very top, it looks like a little red footprint is also there. I don't know what that's about, but they both have that. I guess that's just part of the design or how it was sliced or whatever. And by the way, for the slicers, I did use Snapmaker's Snapmaker Orca for all the prints that were done on the U1 and Flash Studio for the Creator 5. So regular Orca slicer was not used for any of these, in case you are curious. And now we come to some things that needed supports to print as we look at some of these models here. Now let's start with this Mo Golem here. And the darker colored yellow Mo came from the Snapmaker U1. And then I also have a couple more that were printed on the Creator 5. And as you look around it, you can kind of see that the surface finish between the two, they do look very similar, but where you will see a difference is on one of these Mo's that came off the Creator 5, one of his fingers has snapped off. And that was because I found that the support removal process on the Creator 5, when everything is just left in its regular default settings, like I did with the U1, are harder to remove compared to the U1. So in removing those supports, and it was a lot of supports on this Mo figure in quite tricky places. Removing one of them did end up taking one of his fingers with it, but that was not the case on the U1. So some tweaks to the support settings in the Flash Studio slicer would definitely need to be made in order to make that process easier so that you don't end up breaking a more delicate part of the model when you are removing the supports. But if you kind of look past support damage, they both do still look very, very close to each other. Now, there's also another Mo figure that I printed on the Creator 5, but this time I decided to use PETG as a support interface for it. And that's the one where the ring is not orange, instead it's just yellow. And removing those PETG support interfaces, they were a little bit tricky because the supports were in tricky, very sensitive areas. So even though they were coming off easily enough, they were sort of getting tangled within themselves. So it still required more dedication and being a little bit more careful to remove those supports. And at the end result is the surface underneath them, while not completely smooth and completely clean, you can tell that in some areas it is a little bit cleaner compared to what it was. So if I had to give the edge to one of these printers in the case of Mo, it would have to be for the Snapmaker U1, simply because of how easy it was to remove the supports the first time around without having to care too much about whether an appendage was going to be broken. But like I said, the surface quality still looks pretty good. I also think that the eyes of Mo on the U1 looks a little bit cleaner than the eyes on the Creator 5. And now moving to the last sample print is going to be for this Sideshow Bob figure, as I forget who he's cosplaying as. It's some villain from Lord of the Rings. And once again, the lighter red shade of his hair, that means it came from the Snapmaker U1. The darker shade of red means that he came off of the Creator 5. And the immediate large difference between these two is when it comes to the handle on his flail, it is broken on the Creator 5 version for the same reasons that I mentioned earlier, and that the supports are harder to remove on the Creator 5 when you use the default settings. I didn't use any PTG support interfaces this time around. I just let it go. I had PLA for 3 filaments, and then I had PLA silk for the silver pieces. And while removing some of the supports and ended up breaking off a small little piece of the handle, it can be glued back on, but that was not the case for the U1 version because the supports were easier to remove. And then looking at other parts of him, for the most part, they look very similar, with the exception being the sword here. I think that the sword came out to look cleaner on the Snapmaker U1. Both of them had some stringing on this sword part that I did clean up with a heat gun and little tiny parts of filament that were sticking out just a little bit that I just sort of picked off with my thumb. But even after doing all of that, you can see that the Snapmaker's version still looks a little bit cleaner and it feels a little bit smoother compared to the Creator 5. So if you wanted to spend a little bit more time to get that looking, just perfect, you can, but just kind of straight off the printer with minimal post-processing, yeah, that's how it came out. And you'll also notice that underneath Sideshow Bob's nose is still a little bit of supports from the Creator 5, and I tried to remove it, but they're on there a little bit too good, so it was starting to take his nose off with it. So I decided to just leave it there so I wouldn't rip his nose off. So once again, when you mess with the supports on the Creator 5 in the Flash Studio app, I do think that it's a good idea for you to tweak the supports, raising the Z distance height for those supports just to make it a little bit easier to remove instead of keeping it at the default, which in this case was 0.2 millimeters. So that's just something to keep in mind. Hopefully Flashforge will be able to just sort of look at those support settings again, just kind of make things a little bit easier to remove supports through software updates. The Snapmaker U1 has been out for much longer. There have been plenty of updates of the firmware for the printer as well as the slicer, so it has a head start. So, we don't know what is going to be improved on the Creator 5 just yet, but fingers crossed they will do it just so they can make that support removal process more easy in the future. Anyway, that's just a little small taste, a little small sample. And I'm going to be doing more stuff with this Creator 5. This is actually a different Creator 5 than the one that I originally had, because the one that I originally had developed some issues and it needed to be replaced. So this is the production version, the same type of printer that you are going to be getting if you ordered it. So this isn't one of those early bird prototype ones like the one that I had earlier. This one is what you are actually getting, and it performs much better than the one that I had before. So that's going to do it for now. If you want to see more videos about the Flashforge Creator 5 and the Snapmaker U1 butting heads to see, the pros and cons for either of them, go ahead and subscribe to the channel, because I will be making more videos about that now that the new and improved Creator 5 is in my possession. So until then, take care of yourselves, and I'll speak to you soon.